35 million people voted for a regime change. They gave democracy a kick in the ass to welcome the second hegemonic party system in Mexico. My intuition is that the vast majority did not know exactly what that means and what consequences their vote will have on daily life in this country. It will take us a long time to understand the reasons for the votes of those 35 million. I want to insist on how silly and manipulative are the reasons I have heard so far. In time, we will see that those generic reasons that pretend to give generic explanations to the vote of 35 million individuals are wrong and, above all, artificial. I maintain that they are much more propaganda than serious analysis. I reiterate what I said last Friday. They intend to impose a narrative that ignores or puts in the background the central axis of the Obradorato's triumph, which is the gross, monstrous, and grotesque state election. Any analysis of the results that ignores the reality of a profoundly undemocratic election is wrong and biased, and most of them are part of the Obradorato propaganda apparatus. I still do not dare to interpret the reasons of those 35 million people. What we can clearly see today is what that vote provoked, which is an authentic change of regime. Yeah, although it hurts to say it, we cease to be a democracy, and the second era of the hegemonic party emerged. In this article today in Reforma's newspaper, Jesus Silva Herzog Marquez calls it the popular autocracy. The name of the new regime is the list of it. If we intend to generate a resistance movement among those of us who want one day to return to live in a democracy, we have to recognize with all the pain in our hearts that Mexico today is no longer a democracy. A good friend of mine said to me last week, the people have given up on democracy. They do not care about it. Nobody understands what it means. And apparently, based on the results of the election, he may be partially right. And I say partially because I sense that the vast majority of people do not know or understand what exactly we lost when we left democracy behind and welcomed the new hegemonic party system. This episode is not only for them, it is also for all of us who live in this country and for those who want to come to Mexico to live, to study, to work, or to invest. There are 5 things that we will no longer have in this country as long as this new self-imposed regime lasts. Let's explain one by one each of them so we can all understand. Loss number 1. Plurality, diversity, and dialogue are lost. One of the most important values of a democracy is the recognition of diversity and plurality, not only as a normal feature of society, but as a central element in decision-making. In a democracy, one does not seek to crush and destroy the adversary, the one who thinks differently from you. Majority rule in democracies is not a permission to disappear or abuse the other. The majority rule of democracies is a temporary permission to make decisions of power subject to the Constitution and the laws, which protect the rights and freedoms of all, especially those who do not have power. The recognition of plurality and diversity and the protection of minorities as an essential part of a constitutional democracy arises from the terrible experiences that led to the Second World War, National Socialism and Italian fascism. From those experiences, we have learned as a world society that it was a bad idea to give all the power to a political movement that rejects plurality and seeks to impose a single vision of history, of society, of the exercise of government, and of the purpose of the exercise of power. Today, the Obradorato feels that it obtained a mandate at the ballot box to destroy plurality and diversity and to crush any person or institution that challenges that hegemony. In various ways, I have heard representatives that warned that they will not accept criticism or dissent and that they will destroy any institution that protects it. Any resistance movement has to have at its core the vindication of plurality, diversity, and individual freedoms to give voice and space to all those who do not feel identified or represented by the hegemonic powers that was imposed by the supermajority. Loss number 2. Submission to the law is lost. Another of the great lessons of the last 100 years of world history is that it is a lousy idea to let a political movement assume that it is exempt from complying with the law. The worst tyrannies of the last 100 years have arisen from political movements that disdained the law as a mandatory parameter for the exercise of power, or changed it in order to adapt it to their objective of imposing hegemony. The wording of the Obradorato is that they intend to destroy the judiciary and the autonomous bodies, which are precisely those in charge of subjecting all public servants to the law, and to turn them into convenient bodies for ratifying their abuses. It is about time to believe them when they clearly warn us about something they will do. I read and listen to several naive people who still trust in the personal moderation of those who asked for a supermajority to do just that. Without an autonomous judiciary or specialized bodies that enjoy independence in the exercise of their functions, governments at different levels, as well as the federal and local legislative branches, will be able to abuse power with impunity, restrict your rights or even eliminate them, disregard any contract or agreement, and deny any obligation, just like that. A resistant movement in this new non-democratic regime must permanently fight for the return of the rule of law, which is the submission of power and the powerful to the law. It is the only way to recover a democratic republic. Loss number 3. Transparency and accountability are lost. Another golden lesson we can draw from observing the last 100 years of the world's most important and successful democracies is that it is impossible to limit and demand power if we do not know how and for what purposes it is being used. After World War II, the various democracies of the planet underwent a complete transformation. The citizens of each of these democracies demanded that they stop being a dark and opaque box in which a few people made decisions without explaining reasons or being accountable, to become transparent spaces in which not only the flow and reasons for each decision could be seen, but also their relevance and their results could be evaluated. To then assign responsibilities and decide with the vote whether they were rewarded or punished. The Obradorato is absolutely allergic to transparency and accountability. Lopez's worst angers throughout his 6-year term arose from being exposed for his failures, abuses, and corruption by way of transparency. He never hid his aversion to the institutionalization of transparency and has already proposed to eliminate it from the new regime. Thus, as the new hegemonic party regime advances, it will be more and more difficult to learn about their motives, evolution, and results of government decisions. The institutionalization of darkness and lies will be the hallmark of this new regime. A resistant movement in this new non-democratic regime must permanently fight for the return of transparency and accountability as the fundamental basis for rebuilding a democratic republic. Loss number 4. Technical specialization in strategic issues is lost. Modern democracies have undergone an enormous evolution in the last 40 years. Societies living in democracy identified several strategic issues that should have highly specialized bodies to regulate, generate public policies, and become an independent and strong arbiter that could bring order to the most powerful interest groups in a society. Thus, arose bodies specialized in monetary policy, financial systems, telecommunications, energy, competition, the environment, or new technologies, capable of regulating their sectors and subjecting public and private players to their decisions for the good of society and not for the good of a political movement. Perhaps the most elementary of all, the most strategic as the backbone of a democracy, is the body that organizes elections and counts votes. These bodies have been consolidated as central elements of democracy and the republic because they place the interests and the needs of society at the center and are capable of putting the most powerful players in the country in order. The Obradorato abhors these bodies. In the first stage of the Obradorato, it was dedicated to invade, subdue, weaken, and capture them. In the second stage of the Obradorato, they have already warned that they intend to destroy them. Why fight them if they can just eliminate them? This is not my opinion. It was a clear campaign warning, and it is stated in several reform proposals. A resistance movement in this new non-democratic regime must permanently fight for the return of these strategic and specialized organs in order to recover, little by little, the submission of all the powerful to the interests of the republic and to the rules of democracy. Loss number 5. The possibility of correcting and changing course with the vote is lost. The most serious blow of all to the democratic republic will be the destruction of the autonomous body that organizes elections and counts the votes. We have been warned. They plan to destroy the National Electoral Institute and they intend to create the Welfare Election Institute or something like that. It was a campaign promise that many unwary people still do not believe. They arrived by the democratic ladder built for them by the Instituto Nacional Electoral, and now they want to destroy that ladder so that no one else can reach power. So clear, so easy, so serious. A resistance movement in this new non-democratic regime must permanently fight for the permanence, or in its case, the reconstruction of an autonomous, capable, and strong institute that do not only organizes elections, but also has the capacity to regulate the competitors and can submit them to the law. All that I can say right now, with a broken heart, but with a lot of energy, is Viva la Resistencia. Long live the resistance in Mexico.